The Star Wars universe is lavish with an array of diverse creatures and incredibly interesting wildlife, populated by one of the most extensive casts of fictional creatures in modern pop culture. The galaxy far, far away is home to several iconic beasts and different animals. One such creature arose to prominence all the way back in 1983 with the release of Return of the Jedi, but has subsequently been widely discarded until just recently. Almost 40 years ago, Luke Skywalker faced off against the ferocious creature known as the Rancor, almost being devoured in the pits of Jabba's palace, and while Luke was ultimately able to defeat the Rancor, the presence of such an iconic creature has been relatively sparse in recent years. While the Rancor creature has been intermittently throughout Star Wars, it hasn't had a highly significant role until the return of another Star Wars icon, as well as a small episode that featured a brand new Rancor in the Bad Batch. However, its return to live action is marked by the bounty hunter turned crime lord Boba Fett. Throughout the book of Boba Fett, we are slowly learning a bit more about the Rancor as a species within Star Wars canon, and it seems likely that the creature will grow in significance in the coming weeks as the show continues to air. Minor spoilers for the first 3 episodes of the book of Boba Fett. The Book of Boba Fett has had an uncanny ability to add new depth to previously underdeveloped corners of the Star Wars universe, and shine a brand new light on what were previously one-dimensional aspects of the lore. The Tusken Raiders, for example, had been seen as a mindlessly savage race that tormented the deserts of Tatooine since their introduction in A New Hope. They simply existed to pose a physical threat to the wanderers who would traverse the desert planet, yet the Boba Fett series was able to reframe them as misunderstood tribes, with their own culture and unique practices, even going so far as to make them sympathetic characters. Similarly, it seems as if Rancors are on a similar course as we learn more about the creature. So what do we have yet to learn about the Rancors? Where does the species come from, and what makes them more than simple rampaging beasts? Well, stick with us, weary acolytes of the galaxy, and let's explore the full, rather tragic story of the beasts known as Rancors, and where we can expect their journey to go from here on out. The oldest known Rancors were native to the planet of Dathomir, and were not commonly seen on Tatooine until far, far later in the timeline. These Rancors existed primarily as pack animals, who were considered to be relatively harmless until provoked. The Rancors opted to live within their own groups, though they were eventually domesticated by the same witches of Dathomir that raised Sith assassin Darth Maul as well as Ventress. During the incursion of Thrompath, the Rancors and the witches began to work together in order to stave off the invaders, and though Rancors are only semi-sentient, they had their own interests to preserve. In their natural packs, they respected a structural society hierarchy wherein the strongest of the pack would lead until they were defeated by a challenger, in which case the rest of the Rancors in a particular collective would respect the new alpha. They had their own complex social structures and societies, even though they did not have the same intellect as many of the other sentient species of Star Wars. This, though, is believed to be the natural existence of a Rancor, relatively peaceful creatures who, when provoked, could be exceptionally dangerous, but were not inherently extremely aggressive. However, they could be trained to be so. Upon their domestication, many Rancors befell one of 2 common fates as decided by their new owners. The first fate that many Rancors were subject to after being domesticated and kept as pets was also the primary reason why the creatures garnered a reputation as ferocious, deadly beasts to be feared across the galaxy. This was because Rancors were often bred and raised for combat in public arenas, wherein their owners would use them as contestants in fights that would subsequently be bet upon. Rancors would be born into captivity and provoked into violence against their nature, and many of their owners would enter them into gladiatorial fights to be wagered on. Other owners, such as Jabba the Hutt, would utilize the Rancors as shows of power, and Jabba had a particular affinity for feeding those who displeased him to his pet beast. For Jabba, his Rancor, who was named Patissa, was a symbol of fear that helped him maintain his grip on the criminal empire. He would feed traitors and embarrassments to Patissa for sport, and these events would often be flamboyant, entertaining shows for onlookers, as we see showcased in Return of the Jedi. However, when raised properly, Rancors were known to be kind and loyal to their owners, as we see the beginnings of this taking shape in the Book of Boba Fett Episode 3. In the latest episode, we learn a whole lot about the Rancor, as the Hutt twins offer Boba Fett a new Rancor as a show of truce, and sign that they can all peacefully coexist. When ushered inside, Boba Fett asks why the Rancor is blinded, and the handler explains that the Rancors imprint on the first human that they see, which prompts Boba Fett to ask if he can learn how to ride the infant beast, just like the witches of Dathomir used to. This seems to suggest that the show will take a turn and show the gentler, more complicated side of this often exploited race, and once again show the complexities that can't be simply defined and marginalized into basic definitions. If Boba Fett succeeds in taming this Rancor, it might not just be a type of pet to him, but a comrade that he grows a meaningful emotional bond with. And this particular Rancor might have the ability to show more emotional complexity than its predecessor, Patisa, did, who was simply kept as a spectacle. Other types of Rancors that we've seen across the Star Wars universe come from the places and planets like Felucia and Vonran, though these Rancors are subspecies of their Dathomirian ancestors, and vary in appearance and stature as a direct result of their evolutionary path. Rage Rancors, however, were often more volatile than their cousins, and were more easily provoked into violence, while Shadow Rancors sported dark skin. One particular subspecies of Rancor was known as the Jungle Rancor, as we saw a member of the Jungle Rancor subspecies all the way back in the Clone Wars. Natives of the planet of Felucia, Anakin Skywalker, Obi-Wan Kenobi, and Ahsoka Tano came across a pack of the creatures when they ventured to the planet in order to follow up on the destruction of a medical facility. After coming into contact with a group of the creatures, they learned that the pack of beasts had learned how to peacefully coexist with the native farmers, showing us a glimpse into their more peaceful nature as a free-roaming creature who only resorted to violence when provoked. We also saw another adolescent Rancor as recent as the events of the Bad Batch, which canonically takes place roughly 20 years before the Book of Boba Fett, but was only released just last year. In the episode, the Bad Batch rescued the Rancor known as Muchi from Ord Patel at the behest of Sid, though they were not initially informed that Muchi was actually a Rancor. If the Rancor that we see in the Book of Boba Fett is in fact set to become a much more complex character and player, it may assist in adding depth to yet another corner of the Star Wars galaxy that had been commonly seen as simple-minded savagery, but that remains to be seen throughout the remainder of the Book of Boba Fett series. What's unique about the Rancor is they're not inherently this ultra-violent species, only they can be bred to become so, which is why they've garnered such a negative reputation throughout the populace of the Star Wars galaxy, as they're viewed as symbols of violence and power, popularized again by the witches of Dathomir as well as Jabba the Hutt, when in reality the true form and state of these creatures is not violent, mindless beasts, but rather innocent animals that when provoked will obviously and justifiably fight back. But again friends, what are your thoughts on this, and what are your thoughts on the Rancor species? Did you know a lot about the Rancor species before watching this video, and what do you hope to see from the Rancor from the Book of Boba Fett? As always my friends, thank you guys so much for watching and supporting the channel, it means the world to me. May the Force be with you, and have a great day.